Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. And joining me this evening is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and investment advisor, Terrence Hollingsworth. Terry, how you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Dr. Ratliff?
Good, my brother. It's all about the world of education, world of finance, and looking to see what's going on in the world of business. And kind of want to pick your brain because you and I talked, recently about AMC, AMC movie theater and the situation with that. So, what's going on with that? Tell our audience about that.
Yeah. AMC is got caught into the COVID 19 pandemic like every other business. The problem that happened was the world changed. So prior to COVID, we had Netflix and almost nobody else in terms of streaming service. When we went through COVID, all of the businesses got shut down. Of course, movie theaters got shut down. It forced the studios and everybody to come up with their own streaming service. And quite honestly, going through 2 years with no revenue, how does a company do that? Well, AMC put on debt. They borrowed a lot of money. They issued new stock, and where they're at now is, they have high debt, lower revenues, and one of I think the second largest movie chain already filed for bankruptcy. So, is that in the cards for AMC? Maybe. Let's talk about it on Thursday.
Right. So, as you know by now, those of you who do not know, Terry and I co-facilitate a Masters of Investment Finance class. It's free and it's virtual. To register or to join the conversation, send me an email at sratliff68@yahoo.com, and I will respond with the link, the Zoom link. It's a 1 hour class. We have really in-depth conversation. You do not need to be an expert investor. Matter of fact, you may not have any type of investment experience, but this is the arena to join us because we have these fruitful discussions. And Terry, as I mentioned, is an expert in his craft, and he can share words of wisdom and knowledge to help make the right decisions once you become invested in the world of finance.
So let's be honest, this is not for expert investors. We want people actively investing, but we want to be comfortable and teach how investment decisions are made from a professional standpoint. I'm able to offer some insight there. I try to simplify these very complex Wall Street strategies and ideas, and so that everybody can understand it. Because at the end of the day, you need the exposure of the stock market in order to stay in front of inflation, in order to have enough money to retire. So.
And during these challenging economic times with inflation taking place and the Federal Reserve raising the Federal Reserve interest rate, and which it impacts, our ability to buy food and gas and things like that, we need to be more knowledgeable about the world of finance, right, Terry?
Absolutely. Again, regardless of where you are, at some point you want to retire. At some point you want to be financially independent. And the only way to get there really is investing in the stock market and being consistent there. And if you do so, then chances are you're gonna be just fine.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Terry. We will move on to the next item. I'm very excited about our three guests tonight. This is the first time we're going to have multiple guests on this podcast, but when you are capturing the attention of the community and you connected to the community, these type of lessons do take place. So I'm excited about introducing our three guests. The first guest, who I'd like to introduce, and by the way, all three are candidates for the school board for District 209, Proviso Township. Proviso is my alma mater. Shout out to Class 86 in the mix. But our first guest is Jenny Barbahen. Ms. Barbahen, or Jenny, is a lifelong resident of Forest Park. Jenny has worked to bring positive change to the district. That's the Proviso Township District through her work as co-chair of the Proviso Action Team for Partnerships under former Proviso East Principal Dr. Patrick Hardy, whose name still resonates to this day. Jenny plans to focus on improving the work environment in Proviso Township and school culture in the district for teachers, for students, and for the staff. Jenny is the mother of 4 children, and her oldest attends Proviso East High School. Let's welcome Jenny Barbahen. Good evening,
Hi.
Jenny. How are
Good
you?
evening. I'm great. How are you?
Good. Good to have you. Glad to have you take time from your busy schedule to join us tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. And now I'd like to introduce our second guest. He is also, as I mentioned before, a District 209 school board candidate, Mr. David Ocampo. David is a Westchester resident and data engineer with the Global Manufacturer Company. David plans to bring his experience in analyzing logistics and financial data to the District 209 to the board to ensure fiscal responsibility, which is a district priority. He also wants to see District 209 improve community outreach to underserved groups, including special education and English language learners, also known as ELL, including special education, also known as SPED, and English language learners, as I just mentioned. David, his wife, and their 3 young children regularly volunteer at the local food pantry, and his family is active in Cub Scouts. Please help me welcome Mr. David Ocampo. David.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
Good. Thank you for joining us this evening and taking time from your busy schedule as well for this podcast. And third, and certainly not least, I'd like to bring on Miss Sandra Hixson. Sandra is a Maywood native, graduate of Proviso East High School, class of 68, and a former substitute teacher at Proviso West High School. Sandra served on District 88 Bellwood School Board. She believes fresh board leadership can develop and implement policies to create positive and long-term change for all District 209 students, and she wants to ensure greater transparency and accountability. Please help me welcome Sandra Hixson.
Hello, everyone.
How are you, Sandra?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have all 3 of you on this podcast this evening, and let's get right to talking. Okay. I'd like to just start off by asking the 3 of you, what was your motivation for running for the school board for District 209? And I'll just start with you, Jenny, if you don't mind.
Sure. My motivation really came from, I'm a lifelong Forest Parker. So Proviso has always been in my realm. I went to Trinity High School, and there's this excitement that was building around Proviso East specifically as my children were getting older. My oldest started as a freshman at East, and it's just such a magnetic building. There's such a great feeling, positive culture walking in, and we had an amazing first year. And so now I've been a parent under 2 different administrations in D209, and I'm starting to see things that I don't think are great. I'm seeing our children not being serviced properly, and it's upsetting. It's worrying because all of our kids deserve the best public education system that we can provide. And I don't feel like we're providing the best of the best for our children. So I'm really motivated to jump in there, get in there. I've seen us get to the precipice of success and good school culture climate, and now I've seen it kind of decline. So I'm ready to get in there, do the work, and help kind of rebuild and restore our schools so they can really take off.
I'm glad. One thing you mentioned, Jenny, real quick, is that the students have not been served properly. Can you just take a deeper dive into what do you mean by not served properly? You mentioned 2 different administrations. Was there a fall off from one administration to the next, or let's be more?
Sure. So specifically speaking about our special education children, any kids with IEPs, right now our class sizes are just astronomical. And by law, if you have 10 students with an IEP in your classroom, you have to have a co-teacher being taught. And as we all know, there's a global or a national teacher shortage, but Proviso is really being affected by more than just a national teacher shortage. But we have mass resignations due to bad work environment. And so we don't have enough teachers. We have large class sizes. We have students with IEPs, and they're not getting the minutes that they are rightfully deserving of. So that's one example. And then David could probably speak more to it later with our ELL, or English language learners, are also not being properly tested and placed within their classrooms.
And one more question, Jenny. Now, you mentioned IEP. Now, could you just tell the audience what the acronyms IEP stand for?
Sure.
And how
Sorry.
as far as the district? No problem. No problem.
IEP is an individualized education program or plan. So any student that, like for mine, for example, has dyslexia. So he has an IEP, an individualized plan that kind of follows him from class to class so that he gets different exceptions. He gets extended time on tests. And that's just one very small example of one specific disability. But the spectrum is huge with IEPs, and they range from behaviors, different diverse learners. So not everybody's a normal learner. So any kind of diverse learner will have an individualized plan that follows them through classes that helps give them kind of the equal footing.
And they also have to submit a report to the state or to the district and things of that nature.
Yeah, correct. They would have a case manager, and somebody would kind of develop this plan with parents' input. They have yearly updates to IEP plans, and then the teachers and staff would then help fulfill those requirements.
And is it true also that sometimes the case manager will actually, if necessary, go to the classroom and ask the student to come out so they maybe work on them on some type of task or exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal with an IEP is to have the least restrictive environment, right? So the most regular or normal class experience is always kind of the goal for an IEP. And so sometimes there's push in or pull out kind of terms. So do we have co-teachers pushing into classrooms, or is it more of a pull-out service where it needs to be in a different environment for, some physical disabilities would require that?
Sure. Awesome. Thank you for the clarity and being able to answer so thoroughly. So thank you for that. And so I'd like to ask David, if you don't mind, what was your motivation for running for D209?
Yeah, sure. So initially I was on the fringe, kind of just witnessing the whole story via social media. I was getting bits and pieces, and you get a general sense of what was going on with the schools. But it wasn't until I got more involved and I witnessed the atrocities that were going on. Now, my oldest is 9 right now, and our plan is for her to integrate into the high schools, right? The local high schools. And just standing by and witnessing, it's like a slow moving train that's about to derail, right? And it's just, I can't allow that to happen, right? I have to be the change in the community to right the wrongs. That one is a concerned taxpayer, right? There was a mention of the budget that was recently approved. And there was just so many questions about that, not only from the community, but from some board members, and they weren't thoroughly answered. And so there's a lack of transparency, a lack of communication. And, again, going back to us as taxpayers, we deserve to know what's going on with our resources and that they are well spent on our students.
Right.
To help them grow in all sorts of manners, especially some of our underserved students, such as ELL students. ELL being English language learners. Now, it's no secret that the Latino community is quite sizable in Proviso, but if you look at some of the numbers, they're not getting the proper resources, and so we have to work together as a community to right those wrongs.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and also mentioned ELL. Proviso Township does have a growing Hispanic population, and even looking at the budget, because you had mentioned the financial aspect. There was an article last year that was published about the budget for fiscal year 22, and they mentioned that the budget has 117.5 million in revenue, and that's what it takes to run a school or a business. But then the expenses projected came out to $129.3 million. So, Because my math served me correctly. That's basically, just under $12 million deficit. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's like 11.8 or something like that. Nonetheless,
And where is it going, right? Like, how is it
yeah,
being used?
that's an allocation.
That's
Yeah.
like the next question. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you didn't. But was it not clear how the money was to be allocated or how it's going to be, even with this most recent approval?
Well, yeah, I looked at it initially, and pairing it with what some of the conversations going on in social media. One example was, Jenny or Sandra, please correct me if I'm wrong, but SPED had $0 allocated, and
That's correct.
the administration could not provide a solid answer as to why it was. They were kind of beating around the bush, but it's just it's. I was dumbfounded. They will just allow that to go through and say, here, $0 for SPED. I mean, anyone can see a goose egg.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking at it.
Important as SPED, which is
Yeah.
special education. I mean, it's just, it's unacceptable.
So that was one of your motivations because you saw,
Mismanagement. Yeah.
Okay. That does make sense. And the fact that you mentioned that your oldest was 9 years old, and you want them to be able to attend a good school.
Exactly. Yes.
Is your children homeschooled right now?
Currently, yes, they are homeschooled, and then there's a plan in place that they get them integrated back into the grade schools. Get them
Fantastic.
ready for high school.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Sandra, you are a Proviso East alumni, class of 68. And so, what was your motivation for running for school board this time around?
For me, it was all about culture and climate of the school. I started subbing at West, or all three schools actually, in 2015. In 2015, the teachers, the students, the staff, everybody was so cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Previous administration,
Yeah.
as a substitute teacher, I could tell you what we had. We had orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Under this new administration, there has not been anything. Teachers were so excited. Students were so excited. And when I start seeing moral decay and students questioning adults, students that would never say anything like, how do you all expect for us to learn in a toxic environment?
Right.
We feel safe. All of a sudden, I started listening. And then I started praying. And I said, you know what? Let me pray. Then let me ask my family. Then I had to search myself. I had to search my soul to come up with, especially at this stage in my life.
Right.
What can I do? I can complain about it, or as David said, we can be the change that we want to see. So I see, Lord, with your help, I'm going to do this.
Absolutely.
And so just seeing that toxicity every day, I knew I could not idly sit by and do nothing, because that's not why I'm called.
Right. Right. Well, thank you for that. And you also mentioned that, you want to ensure greater transparency and accountability. What you're saying, did that connect to your focus or vision for the school district?
As adults, if we have a car accident and we're at fault, we have to be accountable, correct? Even though we don't want to tell our insurance company, I was on my cell phone, I wasn't, whatever.
Right.
But the fact is, I caused this accident. Who's taking accountability for our students? Who is? The teachers are. The students want to learn. What is the administration doing? What is this board doing? How accountable are they? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I voted for them. I did. I was like, rah, rah, sis, boom, bye. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, what happened?
Right.
What happened?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you mentioned moral decay. I mean, that is that's deep. I mean, the moral decay in terms of losing confidence, lack of transparency, lack of care, things
Yeah.
like that you're laying out. And so together, the three of you form Proviso 209 United. That's the name of your ticket, correct? Okay. Also known as HBO, as you say.
HBO. HBO.
Yeah. For those of you, HBO back in the day was called Home Box Office. I think it's still around, but it was definitely big in the late 70s through the 80s. So,
But it's now known as Hixson, Barbahen, Ocampo. So
That's right.
thank you so much. I want to get into some of the comments that the three of you made in the introductory statement. Some of the comments on social media, and David, you mentioned, for example, that kind of like drove you to, running because you saw what was going on. And these are parents. These aren't just, agitators. These are parents who have children who attended a Proviso Township school, or they're currently in school, or they are looking in the future because their child or children are going to attend Proviso Township School, whether it's East, West, or PMSA. So in terms of the transparency, in terms of the camaraderie or lack thereof, and just a lack of accountability, what do you see your role? All right. So I'm looking forward. All right. You tweet the ticket. All three of you win. Where do you see yourself contributing to the board and its divisiveness? Because I don't know if you have majority if all three of you win, but certainly if you win, then the vision is going to be there for the moment you're sworn in until a point where it's either going to work out or not work out. So what is your vision in terms of creating transparency, more fiscal responsibility, accountability? And I'll start with you, Jenny.
Sure. So my vision really is all about rebuilding. When we first get in there, we need to rebuild communication on all levels with all stakeholders. It's not just communication with administration and teachers, but it's parents, community, administration, teachers, and students. So we need to start working on some basics. Some basic foundation things need to be kind of addressed. We also have a lack of trust and a lack of care that we can see. And we have to rebuild our trust so that we can work collaboratively. Right now, we don't have any board committees. I would love to see board committees come back. We need committees that are focused on educational success for our students. We need committees that are also financial committees, right? Mm-hmm. The 7 board members aren't experts in all areas. But if we have committees, we can kind of all focus where we really need to. So I would love to see all the board committees come back, improve communication lines, because if we're not speaking and we're not speaking in a respectful way, and we're not actually speaking to each other to understand, right? Like we can talk, but if you're just listening without intent to understand where we're coming from, so we really have to rebuild some of just the basic foundation. And in order to do the next big steps, we have to have that base.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I pose the same question to you, David, in terms of what you'll bring to the board
Sure.
if you should be elected.
Yeah. So as a data guy, I am big on tracking and trying to see how we've achieved to that goal, right? So in a lot of things that I've witnessed, specifically around board meetings, school board meetings, oftentimes concerned parents, they voice their concern, and it's like talking to a brick wall sometimes, where they voice their opinion, but what happens next, right? There is no actionable next step. I'd like to start collecting this data, having it visible to the community, because we see it through social media posts,
right?
But you would have to, gather all that data and see what are the priorities. We know transportation is an issue. We know finances are an issue, but we don't know the magnitude. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to bring that to the forefront. That's one thing, is to make that more visible. The second thing is connecting with what I'll call our marginalized groups, ELL, SPED. Our Latino community, they're oftentimes in the dark, so to speak, when something happens. I've had accounts where a parent didn't know, for example, the teacher strike. They didn't know that was happening because wasn't communicated to them, and especially if there's a language barrier, right?
Right.
So we need to establish communication with our communities again, because we are serving them.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for that. You mentioned ELL, SPED, transportation, which I did read about, and I saw that, turns out being a major problem. You just not being picked up, and that kind of thing. I mean, imagine if that was January. I mean,
I saw a social media post from a student today. It was like 49 degrees this morning, and the child said that they've been waiting for half an hour. I mean, if you're not properly dressed, it's.
Yeah, and let's face it, our students, I mean, they'll go like in a hoodie or something, even when it's cold. Like, would you put on a coat? But they don't. They sitting there at the bus stop waiting, freezing. But
those students will wear shorts all the way through winter.
This is amazing.
They will.
But that's why we have to be prepared, right? That's why preparation is important. So, and I'm going to move it on to you, Sandra. Same question. I mean,
okay, so for me, it's active listening versus passive listening. I hear you, but do I really hear you? Or I hear you, or I don't care what you're saying to me. And see, that's what I'm saying. I hear you, but I don't care what you're saying to me.
Right. Are you saying that's on what level? Is that the board level or?
That's the board level, that's administrative level, and we need to stop that. We have to figure out a way. And Dr. Ratliff, you're saying if, I'm saying we are going to be elected.
All right.
We are going to be elected.
Right. Yeah.
And we will figure out a way to work with them without all the yelling and screaming and the visceral that's been going on in the school board. For us, it is all about the children.
Yes.
All about the children. And if it's not about the children, move on, because that's our focus. Our focus is the children, and then the teachers, and then the staff. That other political stuff that they may have going on, fine.
Right.
But for us, it is the children. And they need to, I feel that they need to take a step back and really start listening to what the community is trying to tell them. If you're having parents yelling, screaming about transportation and food and schedule, and you're like, okay, I hear you, but I don't hear you because I'm in control. That we got to stop that. Yeah.
So let me kind of switch gears here. I'm going to ask a tough question. I don't know either of you, but I've seen, heard a lot of great things that you do in the community and things like that. So I'm just going to ask, as an educator, caring about the children means different things for different people. And I want to know from each of you, starting with you, David, what does that mean? Because when you are out there and it comes down to casting a vote, I'm sure the opponents are going to say the same thing. Well, we care about the children too. I mean, maybe there's a funny way of showing it, but they're going to say the same thing. They care about the children. They care about the community. They care about everything like that. So what's going to set you apart to caring about the children and to reconnect with the community? I'll start with you, David.
Okay. So caring about the children, for me, is equipping the children, our future, with the necessary skill set and know-how to succeed. When I was younger, I was not lost, but like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And it was through mentorship that and luckily the Evans Scholar Foundation, I'm not sure if you know about the Evans Scholarship, but through working with the Evans Scholarship, I was able to afford college, right? Many people of color oftentimes don't have the means to get into college, right? So we have to empower our students to find resources to get those opportunities, because those opportunities exist, right? And teach them how to like we discussed earlier, how to invest, how to manage money, equip them with the knowledge to get them ahead in life. That's what it means. How I see is, how I care for the children and the generations, teaching them well.
Absolutely.
And now for your question about the community is, if we don't serve the community properly, the community suffers, right? Like if our children don't get the proper education, I hate to say it, but it may become a crux on society, right? Because then you end up, trying to rectify something. It's wasted time and resources. We can't afford that, especially in the global economy. It's it's dangerous.
Yeah, agree. Okay, same question for you, Jenny.
So I think, in all honesty, actions speak louder than words, right? We can all say that we care about our children, but at the end of the day, if we go to a board meeting and we have an administration and a board of education that pats themselves on the back for saving, $1.5 million by cutting full-time staff, and then we start the school year off and we don't have enough teachers to fill the classrooms, and then we're stuffing kids into classrooms, that's an action that tells me you don't care about children.
Right.
It's important to provide structure, organization, right? You have to have foundational, basic things in place so that we can bring our kids into a school and have them be nurtured and educated and supported in any way that they need. And we need to have easy ways to identify what student needs what, where, and why. If we don't support our teachers' working environment is our students' learning environment. So if teachers are not supported, if teachers aren't provided professional development, how can they then come to work, feel like a professional, be treated like a professional, and then work with our students? So caring about kids for me goes deeper than saying I want the best for kids. It means putting actionable things and plans and structure in place that allows for every student to be successful in whatever way they need it.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said it. It reminds me of my former wrestling coach, high school wrestling coach, Glenn Lidd, who was the greatest science teacher in Proviso East history. He wasn't invited to come back. So, he poured over almost 4 decades into the school as I think it was a chemistry teacher and wrestling coach. So him being my wrestling coach for our 86 state championship wrestling team, and he was there for 91 state championship wrestling team, and just touched so many people in the classroom and on the wrestling and on the baseball field. For him not to be invited to return was really disheartening.
Yeah. And I've seen so many of his past students on social media just missing him, praising him, and really thanking him for all his service to kids. So it's really sad and disappointing to see that happen. We've lost a lot of great teachers and a lot of great staff lately.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And, that hurts the children. I mean, it really does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Sandra, I'd like to pose the same question for you as far as they care about the children and the action plan.
So I walk my talk. I really do. When I walk into a classroom, the first thing I say to the students after I introduce myself is I tell them, I want the same thing for you that I wanted for my children. No more, no less. And then I go in and I tell them what my daughters have accomplished in life. And I tell them, you have the opportunity just like they did. You just have to apply it. So for me, when I'm in that classroom and I'm looking at what the teacher has left me, or even if I've been there for a couple of weeks, it is all about how can I help you achieve where you want to go.
Right.
The students that have left, some students that have graduated, keep up with me so that when you're in college, I'll send you money. You need books, I'll send it. You need a care package, I will send it to you. Let me know where you are. So it just doesn't stop at high school for me, or at least it has not. It is a continuum. And that's how I care. And they know that I care.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, just to piggyback on that, Sandra, I want to ask you this follow-up question, starting with you. You, as mentioned, alumni of Proviso East. You've seen a lot since your graduation of 1968. Here we are in 2022. How has the environment changed besides racially? Okay, we see it change a ton when you were there and they had the riots and back then, and your classmate of Fred Hampton, former Black Panther, Maywood and Fred Hampton. What have you seen as the biggest problem in the school district?
It hurts to say this. I mean, when I was at Proviso, we were number 3 in the state. It was just even though we have racial issues, don't get me wrong, we learned. It was truly a learning environment. And to see Proviso Township high schools go from that pride to this. I was in a teacher's room the other day, and I never thought that she would see me cry. I actually broke talking about what a 16-year-old student had said, an honor student said. And it hurts to have adults make decisions that they know better. They know they're hurting our students. They know it.
Yeah.
Again, it should not be. If you are focused, and if you're asking yourself, what about the children? You know what to do. But if you're, to me, honestly, what I see as our biggest downfall is all about the jobs. I'm just going to come out there and say it. It is not about our students. It is not about our teachers. It's let me hook you up so you can vote for me. No, none of us are about that. The three of us, we are truly about what's going on. If you look at our prospective communities, who would want to move into a neighborhood where your high school is horrible? Well, come on now. And why are we paying all these taxes when our students are not being served? It's not right. It's not fair. So we have to do something.
I'm glad you said that because it kind of reminded me, you mentioned the 16-year-old, and we had Javon Johnson on our podcast a few weeks ago. And, he was pouring out how he felt about being a student of Proviso Township. And, he got through it, and our students, the student body, just seeing it, at least on the surface, seeing to be really struggling, not just academically, but emotionally as well. We know about losing some students due to suicide, and that's very unfortunate. And so with that said, I want to pose the same question to you, Jenny, for Proviso Township, not just Proviso East, but what do you see the biggest problem is in the school district?
I think it comes down to administration making poor choices as far as structure. What we've seen recently is removal of deans. What we've also seen is increase in fights, lack of security. So if our administration is coming in, not really looking at what we have set up, what's working, what's not working, comes and makes sweeping decisions and dismantles the things that weren't working, but also dismantles the things that were. So we have to have leadership that comes in and cares to find out what's happening, and not just make sweeping decisions, but makes decisions that focus on the things that aren't working. So we don't have any deans in our buildings right now. They've been replaced with grade level principals.
Oh, wow.
And on social media, you can see parents, community at the board meetings coming out and being incredibly concerned about school safety. So a lot of that has to do with just basic structure. Our kids feel that. They go into the building and they can feel that there's not an organized way. They feel that chaos, and it affects them emotionally, mentally, and physically. So I think the biggest problem is a lack of structure and decision making that doesn't take into any account what's happening and what's not happening.
Wow. So I'd like to pose the same question to you, David. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the callousness of the administration, going back to several examples where concerned parents, they voice their opinions, and again, it's just silence. The silence from the school board, demeaning remarks from the superintendent and whatnot. And, it causes a lot of friction, right, between the school and the community. And the students, as Jenny mentioned, the students feel it, right? Why would you want to go into an environment where you may not feel safe, or an environment knowing that you may not have class, for a good portion of the day, or your transportation is is sketchy at best, right? Why
Right.
would you want to go in there and then, knowing that the administration is not, they don't have your best interests, right? It seems like they don't.
Mhm.
And we need to change the mentality that the school board should be listening and should take actionable steps, and it should show, right? Like going back to my idea of measuring toward a goal, we should be able to have visible change.
Mhm. Very well. I want to ask the three of you this question, and so you can answer it to the best of your ability. But talking about leadership, David, you mentioned the superintendent. As board members, how should I frame this? How would you handle the situation with the superintendent? Would you move to remove him? Would you move to work with him as a board member? How would that look in spite of all the complaints? And you mentioned the callousness and things of that nature. David, what do you think?
I like to explore all avenues before I make a decision saying, this is it, no ands or buts. But if, and just simply based on what I've witnessed, it doesn't seem to work with people that do not agree with his ideas. If that is the case, then it needs to be removed, because it's downhill. It's been going downhill. We need to stop the bleeding. We're hemorrhaging, and let's just be honest. Removing him doesn't solve all of our problems, right? We have some of these fundamental problems that even if he's gone, we need to address. So I think going back, let's discuss. Let's not give him a chance, but let's try to work as best as we can. But look beyond Henderson and try to have a longer term plan, because from my vantage point, he shouldn't be around much longer.
Okay. And your suggestion, there's no long-term plan in this.
Based on the results and the complaints and everything that I've gathered from social media, the community doesn't want him.
Okay.
Parents don't want him.
Fair enough.
We have to reflect what the community feels like, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
General consensus.
Yeah, for sure. And Jenny, I'd like to pose the same question to you. I mean,
sure. I think a great first step would actually be in evaluating our employee. He has not had any formal evaluation. So I think step one would be, what is the evaluation? We've got a contract, a 5-year contract, an additional 5-year contract. So we have to kind of look at it in steps and not rash actions. Right. So let's evaluate him. Let's see where we are. And, based on what I know, what I've heard from teachers, what I've seen at board meetings for the last 1.5, 2 years, it's not going to be a very good evaluation. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why there hasn't been a formal evaluation, because it's not going to be favorable. Right. And then from there, what are our options, right? Mm-hmm. What are the next steps? And we would need to talk to the attorney for the district and figure out a plan going forward.
Do you take into account what's been taking place historically with Mississippi and, those news reports?
Absolutely. I think that's important to take into account. I mean, we have a pattern of behaviors we've seen in Mississippi and Texas. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to consider what everybody's past is. Right. And listen to the Board of Education from Mississippi as well, and kind of learn from their experience and learn from their guidance on how they've moved forward.
Very, very well. And Sandra, same question with you. So please.
I pretty much agree with what my colleagues are saying, with one caveat, though. We must do that evaluation, but there are some questions that I would like to ask him. I think that we all should be asking this superintendent, as a matter of fact, the school board as well. Yes, we need to take into consideration the Mississippi allegations and what's being said in Texas, come up with our own evaluation tool. and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
But the questions that I have for him would be, he basically put our lives last year in, this year in jeopardy. Why don't we have fire drills anymore? What happened to the active shooter drills?
Mm-hmm.
We had an incident when the students walked out, and I read it in a newspaper that the building was evaluated. Well, I am here on air to say that was the biggest lie that was ever been told.
Mm-hmm.
Students set the bathroom, some toilet paper or whatever on fire in the bathroom. We went on a soft lockdown. We were just like, okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Not that many children in the building. We didn't realize that our lives were at risk.
Mm-hmm.
We were still in that building, but yet it was told that we were evacuated. Why aren't we having those shooter drills? Why aren't we having the fire drills? Why aren't we having the tornado drills?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing as a superintendent?
Sure.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Questions that should be asked. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fire drills should definitely take place. Tornado drills should definitely take place. Active
Yeah.
shooting drills should take place.
And even if they take place, the active shooter drill, some of our classrooms, the doors won't lock. So now what?
Mm. Why don't the school? I'm not sure if this is East and West, but why don't Proviso have the students have access to the lockers?
I know it for Proviso East, they do have access. Most of the students choose not to use the locker. They only have 5 minutes passing period. And if you've been in East, it's a huge building. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a class from one side all the way to the other, mm-hmm. and you have to use the bathroom in 5 minutes, stopping at a locker, there's just not enough time.
I remember I used to do plenty of running from one class all the way to the other side. It was 5 minutes then too. It's like you got to get on it. Then you get in class and ask for a pass to use the bathroom. But I get your point.
Yeah, and the halls are pretty crowded. The halls are crowded. So I think it's just because they just don't have enough time, and it's easier to just bring everything with them. They don't have a lot of physical books either, right? Most of what they're doing is on their laptop. So it's not like you're carrying around 8 big, heavy textbooks. Like most of it's online. Right. So it's not as cumbersome for their backs.
Yeah. You remember that, Sandra? We have 5 minutes in class.
Oh, yeah.
Get the business.
Running down the hallway.
Running like just a backpack on your back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And I know a couple of parents have said, well, winter's coming. What do they do with their jackets? And I think we already covered that earlier. Kids don't wear jackets, right?
No,
they don't exist. So.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about West or PMSA lockers.
Right. Yeah. How do you plan to get the word out? You know, I know that you've been out there, maybe you've done some canvassing, but in terms of preparing for the election, what kind of work have you done in terms of outreach and just connecting with the community about your candidacy? Starting with you, Jenny.
All right. Well, we are hosting town halls. We've already hosted a town hall in Berkeley, and we have a town hall coming up on Monday, October 3rd at Union Sheet Metal Workers in Hillside. So that will be on Monday. And we plan to do this in every Proviso community. Mm-hmm. We also would be happy to come to people's houses, have a little coffee chats. But we will be at events. We're all over social media. But really town halls is our big focus right now, to listen to the community and get to meet us.
You going to go to all 10 communities?
Yes, absolutely. All 10 are part of Proviso.
Yeah, you're right.
And they all deserve to have the attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well said. David, what about you?
So we've been involved in some, I guess you could call them extracurriculars. You know, on the weekends we do some events, community events where we attended, like Sandra, Jenny, and I. We recently attended PT Man, right?
Bishop Sappho. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I won't speak for Sandra is involved in all sorts of events, so I won't speak on her behalf. But we've done some of the Melrose. Was it like the Taste of Melrose Park, local community events, but things will be ramping up soon. In fact, just to put in a plug-in for the Cub Scouts, we'll be doing our food drive soon in Westchester, and I plan to put out the word as well.
Absolutely. Plug away, brother. It's time to do it. So, talk about what's going out there. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's well, I always active on social media, especially on with some of our Spanish-speaking population. So we're going to try to connect with them more.
Okay. Thank you. And Sandra, what about you? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So, come on now. We are all, it is community service based.
Yes.
And so I'm always out in the community. So
very nice. Very nice. I want to ask you that because I know we're coming to the last part of this podcast. And again, thank you for taking time with this. I want to piggyback to, the career aspect. Let's face it. Every student is not going to college. Mm-hmm. Not every student desires to go to college. So what is the push, if there's so, to going towards a career path, whether it's construction, finance, where they get a license as a financial planner? What is those non-traditional college aspects to get through higher academia? What is there such a thing that takes place in Proviso Township? If not, is that a direction as an alternative to colleges and universities that you're looking into? Start with you, Jenny.
Sure. Well, I know that there was a college and career academy, and that is no longer operating as it did in the past. So that's a real shame because trades are incredibly important jobs.
Very.
And you're correct. Not every student is college pathway bound, and that's not a bad thing. We also have to encompass that electricians, plumbers, mechanics, those jobs are good jobs. The trades jobs are good jobs, and they'll always be needed. We really do need to reinvigorate that college and career academy, and connect with our elementary districts. Proviso should connect with Triton. There's lots of different unions that we could connect with and make connections so that we can get apprenticeships set up. And, find our kids a path, right? Because not everybody's path looks the same.
Right. Absolutely.
So I would love to see trades reinvigorated into Proviso.
In that same vein, before I get to you, Sandra, is that something that's part of your vision as a slate to look into that aspect, whether it's through grants? You mentioned connections for apprentices, internships, maybe that kind of thing. Is that something that's part of your vision to bring to the board as a board member?
I mean, absolutely. And part of that is setting up board committees and working collaboratively with teachers and experts in those areas, right? We have a great teacher at Proviso West who is going out and getting grants herself for her students and classes. And that's wonderful. So we need more of that, but we need to know from the experts, right? This teacher was an expert at bringing in grants for Proviso West. So let's talk to her, bring her on board to a committee that is for trades, right? So if we create committees, we can collaborate with experts that are all over Proviso.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sounds really good. Well, what about you, Sandra?
Yeah, it's funny that Jenny said that, because I always, when the students tell me, well, I'm the Hixson, I'm not interested in going to college, I said, okay, well, what's your plan B?
Right.
And so they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, so everyone has this quote side hustle. So what do you think my side hustle is? And they're like, I don't know. I see it. What if I told you event planner? And they're like, really? And then I'll say, what about baking? You like to cook? And they're like, really? I said, you know what? Those are my side hustles. Those are the things that you could take and you can make a career out of. And so, then the students they'll ask, well, what, are you married? And I'll go, yeah. What does your husband do? My husband is a pipe fitter. And they'll go, well, what's that? I said, somebody that makes a lot of money. Yeah. It's a trade. You need to think about that. And so then they start asking, well, how do we go about setting up our business? Or, if I want to be a beautician, what do I need to do? Or if I want to be a barber, or if I want to design my own gym shoes. So yeah, this is something that we definitely said that we want to talk to students about, and, bring that as part of a curriculum to the school.
Yes, absolutely. Please. That would be great.
Yeah.
So the same question with Dave. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, to further what Sandra said, entrepreneurship classes, right? Bring trades. Trades are in dire need because during the COVID pandemic, as people were remodeling, you couldn't get enough. You couldn't find contractors, right? So,
right.
But also entrepreneurship, teaching the youth on how to build their own business, how to invest their resources, scale up, and et cetera. That's huge. And that don't confuse that with an influencer, not to be confused with influencer. But when I was leaving high school back in 2002, my high school was integrating entrepreneurship classes, and that intrigued me. But it wasn't until my mid 30s that I started looking into becoming my own entrepreneur. Right, it's a small scale, but it's let's equip our children with alternative ideas. They don't have to do the traditional high school to college route. Let's give them more opportunities.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, David. It reminds me of, I'm not sure if the three of you are aware of the IB business, IB program, International Baccalaureate program. It's global. I'm actually an IB instructor and coordinator for IB business management and economics in the DC area. And it makes a world of difference to learn about finance and entrepreneurship, knowing the difference between a sole proprietor, a partner, and a corporation. I mean, just things like that they can take with them, knowledge that you'll never forget. Do you foresee, to your knowledge, how much of it does it exist in any of the three schools, whether it's PMSA or East or West? Is there IB program, a full IB program? And if you do know, is there a push to have that as a full IB program where high school students who are enrolled in the program who can earn as much as like 16 hours in advance to go to college? Depending on the university, it could be as much as 30, depending on how well they do in the IB test. Are any of you aware of the IB program?
Yeah, a PMSA does have an IB diploma program. And I know that they are working, or that they announced that there's a PWSA and a PMSA. But part of being the IB diploma is having teachers that are trained to be IB teachers. And I don't think at this moment that we are fully staffed with IB certified teachers at East and West.
Okay.
We're not.
Okay. Is that something that you would put on your agenda once you get settled as board members? Is that something you will visit?
I mean, I think that definitely needs to be addressed. If that's, I don't know if that is urgent. At least to me, there's probably a million things we need to do. Of course, I think that would be fabulous. We definitely need to check into IB accreditation to make sure that we continue to stay accredited, and we have the diploma program at PMSA. And then expanding those programs, I think, is fabulous. Where it falls on the urgency chain, I'm not quite sure.
I think if, just speaking from experience and doing it for as long as I have, consider that on your radar. Maybe not even the first term or whatever. The IB diploma program is huge globally. And even in, lower income communities, having that is an asset to the students, knowledge that they can carry through life and, and things of that nature. And I attended a college fair. We had over 100 colleges representing, from UCLA, Cornell, even local schools, Rutgers University, Virginia Tech, smaller schools. They accept IB graduates, and they had advanced credit and scholarships.
So the scholarship opportunity there is
scholarships galore. So, once you get past the initial urgent matters, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, establishing programs, definitely please consider that. And I'll be more than happy to talk to you more about it, even off air, because it is what I do.
That's a great collaboration, right? You're an expert, and we can totally collaborate.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
So our last couple minutes, I'd like to give you each the floor for a minute or two for closing thoughts. This is your closing statement to the podcast, the audience, and talk about why you should be the next school board member. And I'm going to start with David, then I'll go to Jenny, and then since you're a fellow alumni, Sandra, you, like I said, you're the
I'm
closer.
laughing.
You bring it home.
Okay.
Go ahead. We'll start with you, David. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to say that now is the time for, opportunities. There are opportunities for engagement with the community, opportunities engagement with our students, and opportunity to engage with our teachers, right? To reestablish that trust that is now has deteriorated, and we need to build back everything that has been lost. And I feel like this slate can do that, right? We can work together. The community has our back, and we can achieve great things. Once we whittle down that urgency list, we can start looking at bigger, better things like the IB program, and the possibilities are endless.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. And Jenny, I just want to make mention that you did attend Trinity High School, so I want to let the audience know that you have been always part of the community. So you have the floor now.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having us. I really enjoy the opportunity to talk and chat. I think it's really important for all of our Proviso communities to reestablish the fact that it does take a village to raise a child, to educate a child, to have good educational system. Just because you don't have a kid in the district, or you're an empty nester, or your kids go to private school, doesn't mean that these aren't your kids. All of our community kids should matter to all of us. So I think it's really important to reestablish our community roots. Find out that we're all neighbors, we're all friends, we're all in this together, and that we really all need to show up, stand up, speak up, and be the change that we want to see. If we're not all in, it's going to be really hard to do some of the major work that needs to be done. And Sandra, David, and I are really dedicated to putting students first and at the forefront, and have a laser focus on moving the district forward for not just our current students, but all of our students that are coming up. This is literally the future of our Proviso townships. These are our future doctors, teachers, lawyers, right? They might be 5 or 2 now, but they're going to come up through our education system, and we all need all hands on deck. And we really have to start with that at the basis of just loving your neighbor, being friends with being friends, and dedicated to exceptional public education.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jenny. Appreciate you joining us this evening on our podcast. And we're going to go ahead and move forward to Sandra, my fellow pirate. Please.
Right. So for me, and I've been thinking about dreaming. We are carrying everyone's dreams. We are carrying the dreams of the teacher. We're carrying the dreams of the students. We're carrying the dreams of the parents and the community. This is why we feel that we are entitled to be here. We want to show the community what we can do. We need your help. If you vote for 2 of us, you're going to get the same chaos. We need for everyone to be on board. All 3 of us have to go on so that we can make sure that the students are getting the best education that they need. And we need to make sure that we are being supportive of the staff, more importantly, the teachers and our community.
Very good. Thank you so much, Sandra. And I'd like to thank all 3, Jenny Barbahen, David Ocampo, Sandra Joseph Hixson, for taking time from their busy schedule to join us on this podcast. As Jenny said it best, just to put a bow on it, it takes a village to raise a child. And we're hoping that you continue to support not just your children, but the children who are currently at Proviso Township School and those who are coming in the very near future. So with that said, that ends our podcast. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Thank you for joining us. Like us on Facebook and on YouTube, and we look forward to you joining us on the next Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. Good night, be safe, and God bless.